Hi, I'm Katie Eden Todd from Persona Grata, and today on the 26th of January 2020, I'm having a look at the big question. What does it mean to be Australian today? And what does it mean to be where we are today? How have we got to where we are today in Australia, which is a pretty confronting and very different place from even a year ago? Can I just ask you, I don't want to jump into it. Hi, Deanne. I don't want to jump into it. Hi, Nigel. Until I've got lots of people here. Can you just give me a couple of words? Hi, Katrina. She's got my back. Just give me a couple of words. What does today feel like for you? I'm really, really interested. Joe Josie, hi. Rosemary, fantastic. I'm just going to give people a few minutes just to get on before I jump in because I've been awake all night. Hi, Kylie. All bloody night downloading information that I had to give today, and there's no way I'm going to get it all done. So you're going to get one of my rambles. Plus notes. Hi, Joanna. Lovely to have you with us from New Zealand. You're feeling grounded. Fantastic. Hi, my darling. Trevor's here. Other people. Hi, Scott. You made it live. Beautiful. Carolyn. Stunning. Today feels like gaslighting to me. Yeah. I have such a heaviness and such a sadness today. I thought, oh God, don't let this be another one of the lives where I'd cry. But maybe I will at times, I'm not sure. You feel exhausted? Okay, keep going, people. Tell me where we are. I've got a really big one for you today. It's very confronting for me. Hi, Faye. It's very confronting for me today because I did a little Insta story yesterday showing you where we live, right on the water. How privileged are we? We've been here for 12 weeks, having been in lots of different places like that, that were nothing like this. And we feel incredibly grateful and blessed every day. Hi, Kelly. Great to have you, sweetheart. You feel so blah. It's hard to find words, really. I think it's a really, really powerful day for Australians. I think it's a really confronting day and a heavy day for those of us who are connected, for those of us who are in tune with the bigger picture. But I'm going to try and get us somewhere today with this so we can go further. But right outside of us, we've got 19, 20 barges on the river ready to go with the fireworks. We've got millions of dollars worth of boats lined up in the river, all ready to go. Now, I assiduously avoid Australia Day, always have done. It is an invasion day. It is not something that I feel that I could remotely celebrate. And I know I'm talking to the converted here, but maybe some people are going to watch this video who are not the converted. I feel like where we are today in Australia with the fires, yeah, it's baffling how people cannot have the empathy to understand the pain of what today represents. So I'm going to do a little bit of history, though there'll be owls who know far more facts and can speak more eloquently than I can about a little bit of Australia's history. But how we got today, I have entitled this live, Fires versus Fireworks. And we're going to see why. We're going to look at who Australia is, child or adult, and we're going to look at the huge, gaping, craving, yearning for elder and eldership that we need now. Thank you, Yvette, whatever you're saying here. They've ravaged your hometown. Okay. So it's fires versus fireworks. Let's go a little bit back to get the heaviness and the context of today. When we're when we have difficult things happen in our childhood, as you have had in your childhood, it's been very important that they get acknowledged. Sometimes, or oftentimes, they are not acknowledged by family members who were the perpetrators of whatever happened. But we need to be witnessed. We need our pains to be acknowledged, and we, often through a therapist or can be through friends or other family members. We need to be seen. Hi, Penny. There's nothing wrong with celebrating being Australian, but not on a day that causes so much pain for others. Hi, Mum. Absolutely. It's the insensitivity of where many are. But I'm going to talk mainly personas today. Not mainly, but a lot about Australia's personas today. And I'm going to explain what the different reactions are according to the child this, the adult this, the child. It's really interesting. As I say, I was awake all night as I was downloading this stuff. They didn't bloody shut up. That's life. Natalie, hi. Okay, so in 1788, the first fleet sailed into Sydney Cove. They'd arrived in Australia a couple of days before, but it was on the 26th of January 1788 that the White Fleet of the UK sailed in. Within a year, 70% of the Indigenous population had died due to smallpox and other diseases. They announced it to be terra nullius. No one lived there. They saw the Aboriginal people as animals, as low life, as beneath them. Our Indigenous First Nations people had successfully lived for 40 to 80,000 years, managing this beautiful country and this beautiful land. And in 1788, we have the lions and colonialism comes to our shores. What I perceive and I see so strongly from my raven all over the world right now, hi Judy, is that the world is actually in a fight for its soul. Our entire planet is in the war of its life, where we either ignore soul and try to trick and cheat the world's soul and continue as we have done, or we are brought to our knees in crisis and we begin to birth some soul and come back to soul. We are in that phase right now. It's just resonating with people. You have to give me a little bit of cues. It's really funny when you do it all on your own. Classified Aboriginals as legally as fauna. It wasn't until 1967 in Australia that Aboriginals were accorded to be citizens of this land. We know about the stolen generations. We know about the genocide. We know about they were chain gangs. You literally have photos that are coming up on Facebook this week where men are in chains and shackles around their necks and arms. If some gang or someone took over our family, raped to kill my family, then I would I not want to celebrate that day? Of course not. It's really not such a hard ask. And it's only those in child who cannot get this. It is only those in child who cannot and stubbornly will not get this. And of course, it's predominantly those with very powerful swan. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what I'm allowed to think. So Australia's starting point, obviously our primary persona is swan, because we are a First Nations country that successfully lived in harmony with the land for 40 to 80,000 years. We then have another version of swan that comes, which are the convicts of our ancestry. So those that the entitled, hi Tegan, those that the entitled aristocracy said who had, that people are starving and they steal a loaf of bread, right, you're off to Australia. So we have those who are disenfranchised, who are poor, who are on the outer, who are on the fringes, sent to Australia. And we have convicts, which is very much a rebel, very much a strong person. It's very swan. It's very swan. So we've got double whammy swan going on here. Interesting, isn't it? And there's a sense of rebelliousness against the lions, against the aristocracy, who believe they can go, hi Megan, they can go and take wherever they like, whatever country they like. There was a meeting in a room, and I did know this, but I've forgotten, where 14 European country leaders sat down and decided a long time ago which countries and which parts of Africa they were going to take. They were going to take because they wanted their resources, they wanted the mining, they wanted their crops. They went into the West Indies, sugar, that made people slaves. This is what we're facing now in the 2020s, is the wounds of our roots, of colonialism, white, privileged, male, lion roots. What we have sown, the injustice we have sown through all our systems, through all our way of being, so as disenfranchised swans, left, right and centre, but other people as well, and the poor. We are now seeing what this hideous child entitlement, which has raped our land, raped our resources, raped the people of their culture, and left an extraordinary grief, and then introduce things like alcohol and other things. We take your language, we take your culture, we take your families, everyone is touched. Now in World War II, when the Jews were 6 million people were murdered, we were able to have empathy and understand that all those communities were touched by this tragedy, and that it goes through generations through to today, that the trauma that experienced by grandparents and great-grandparents in the Holocaust and in concentration camps carries through in their DNA to children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren today. So of course, we can trace it now in mice back to 14 generations. Of course, the genocide, slavery, rape, torture, stolen generations are going to have seeds of grief and disempowerment all the way through. This is why we have swans today who have such a terror. The deepest fear is of ambush. Their terror is of being outnumbered, of not fitting in the Western world. Hi, Chantel. Of not being able to cope with beaver education and beaver rules and beaver laws, because they are not their laws. They had laws that worked for them very effectively, and they did not waste, they did not hoard things. They actually knew how to cultivate the land. They had a very sophisticated sense of spirituality, and we might look at it literally, which is completely our stupidity, because it was symbolic, the serpent land. We're on Wajak country today, I might say, and honoured to be so here where I'm sitting today. So we had a complete arrogant dismissal of the wisdom and the elder wisdom of these peoples, who had learnt the laws of land and Mother Nature, and knew when sacrifices need to be made, and knew when we had to harness just enough but no more, and then to sow seeds for the future. This is elder management. Remember, we've talked about elders as being the ones who leave the keys behind to ensure the future generations can flourish. So here we are in 2020, and we've just had the most horrific bushfires known on the planet. How did we get here? We got here because we chose fireworks. We got here because we liked, hi Michael and Kim, we got here because this white entitlement of I can take and I deserve to take and I'm allowed to take whatever I want has been instilled in us forever. We who are white have absolutely zero comprehension of what it has been to live as a black man or a black Indigenous person in this land. At one time I knew a very well-spoken young man who came from South Africa, and he had a BMW that he was fixing up. And this is like 4 or 5 years ago, but he looked Aboriginal because he's black South African. He grew up on a school in South Africa where there was gravel, and the white school next door had lawns and everything that was needed. 6 of his friends were murdered, and his family decided it's time to come to Australia because we want to give you a different life. He was pulled over by the police countless times because if he was driving a BMW, it was an old done-up BMW that he knew how to fix, and was an Aboriginal, it must be stolen. He was an educated young man. We don't understand that sort of persecution. Is it any wonder that swans carry persecution, paranoia, and terror of ambush and genocide, and how they refuse to apologise for things they've done wrong, because it feels like they're having to apologise for their existence, their race, then their way of living and who they are. This is what is unconscious in all swans today. So today is a very divided day in Australia, and it's become more so. We have those who feel we've got to change the date. How could we celebrate the World War II Holocaust, a particular day there where the largest numbers of Jews were killed, and say, let's celebrate our country today, and say, fuck you, I couldn't give a care less. This is my country, I like it, I own it, I'm entitled. We have an appalling track record with the White Australia policy, 1967, the citizenship, as I said. Native title only came about in 1993. There was a turning point, though, in Australia's country where we like to think we're the country of a fair go, of mateship, and we are. We're funny, we're friendly, we sell ourselves in tourism ways this way, and we're welcoming, and we're not lying in that sense. Our top 3 personas, here we go. Our swan, parrot. How we go out in the world is parrot. We like a laugh. We're not worried about appearances. We are very funny. We have ironical humour. We love to include people. We're friendly. And so when we've had immigrants come into our country, the parrots are the first to welcome them with open arms into country towns, etc. The fireys that have been fighting the fires are, of course, swans. They're the Good Samaritans, the volunteers who live in rural areas, who've always been connected to the land, who are the people concerned with agriculture, who are doing it so tough, but they're the first to volunteer and say, let's protect this land that we love. Let's get in there and protect our townspeople. They know life has changed radically now. So we have parrot second. Oh yeah, and they love the story of the First Nation student who graduated as an archaeologist. Yeah, we're proud to be the underdog. Please jump in and tell me your perceptions here. We love being the underdog. We have the tall poppy syndrome. That is so swan. Who are they? They're so up themselves. If you're lion or peacock and you speak about your successes, we get cut down. We've always cut people down because there was a horror of turning out like our ancestors, our British ancestors, that we would be full of ourselves. And that would be the worst thing, to be so out of touch, so full of pretense, so missing what life was all about, so greedy, so about me, not we. And so the tall poppy syndrome is a very big thing in Australia. And then who are we in relationships, do you guess? What would you think? Well, we have to be dog. Australia is very dog, is very passive. We're a little player on the world stage, but I believe we aspire to do better. We came from convicts, we did indeed. And they're the rebel swans who had to pay their penance, and it would have obviously felt that a lot of the punishments were outlandish and they were made slaves. Is there any realise why we're starting to wonder why people are resentful and mistrustful of authority? All of the swans' roots and why they are so quick to jump onto conspiracy theories are because of this history, and it is Australia's #1 persona, have no doubt. How are you going with this? Is this making sense? Have always felt my parrot and dog is the only accepted part of my persona in this country. When I lived in America, I went to the United States and I lived in Kansas in 1984, 1985, and a part of me came alive. I felt so free. I loved it. And of course, the personas are different in America. They have lion and peacock, and they have swan, of course, as well, because they do. But it was lion and peacock that I resonated, and I didn't know the personas, of course, then. And I was in heaven. I felt you were allowed to say, and people would say, wow, well done, fantastic, oh, you're so great, I love that. Gee, you're a superstar. Tell us what else you've done, and they would celebrate and clap. And whereas Australia, if you mentioned, oh, I won this, or I got that, or I'm off here, it's like, oh, okay. You don't make too much about yourself. When I got home on a plane and I came back to Australia and I heard the air hostess speak with the Australian accent on the Qantas plane, I burst into tears, and I was a tough nut. I did not cry easily. I sobbed because I knew that I would feel restricted and I would never feel free in the same way. And I was battling against something that I could not name. And I do not have swan and I do not have dog. So there we have the personas. So here we are, all the way with LBJ. Good on you, Australia. Let's have a flag that's exactly the same as the UK flag. And then we'll just put a little thing of ours in there because we're not strong enough to know our identity. Yeah. Hi, Michelle. Fantastic. So spot on. I've never felt I fitted in with Australia. I've always said I don't want to live here. Get me out of here. I don't belong here. Whereas others feel quintessentially Australian. As I worked out the 6 personas for Australia Today, the second 3 took me a long time. And to work out the order of them, it took me hours last night. Abby has 5 personas out of 6. No wonder this Frenchman, who is my business partner and son-in-law, feels so home in Australia and just loves it and had wanted to live here. It feels like this is home for him. Feels like a karmic loop of orphanism exists with this one line identity of mine today. Nationally, it feels like it continues on a larger scale. They're stuck in child. Yeah, come on, Australia. It's the lowest common denominator, and don't tell me what to do. Don't say I can't do this. Yeah, you felt home and free in Europe. I did in the States, and I loved it. I felt very at home in the UK, I have to admit as well. It's funny, and we would find if we went through our ancestry and got our DNA that that's where we come from. So this is really interesting. So we've been very subservient dog, looking up to, first of all, the UK as a nation of the Commonwealth, and then we did so with the US, and we still are in bed with the US, and we have Scotty from marketing, who I cannot call a prime minister, who's one of the worst prime ministers we have ever been. So I can't say unlucky. We've voted him in resoundingly, that we've been so stupid to vote in. He is weak and without lion leadership and values and vision as anyone I've ever seen. Hi, Dale. So top 3 personas for Australia in this order. Swan, due to the First Nations, and then the convicts coming in. Parrot, as our easygoing, casual, love the beach, love being outside, very funny. Dog, we're very passive and subservient to others, and we need their permission, and we follow them. We jump with Bush into war with little squirmy Johnny Howard. who took us on a very dark path in 2001, which I'm coming to. Yeah, you've got line. Yeah, if you're born, you touch. I felt alive in London. You were born in Cyprus and love it here. Feels like home. Interesting. It'll be to do with your personas. I'm getting to Manasa Nauru. Thank you, sweetheart. Hi, Dale. So great to have you from Sri Lanka or Vietnam. Wow, great. Alrighty. So, underneath, what's our secret identity? Australia's secret identity, and this took me a long while to figure it out. I was wrestling. It's Nightingale. That's enough to make me want to cry now. That I resonate with. The roots of our country from 1788 are the most appalling genocide, the most appalling. Everyone loves our parrot, Joe Josie. That's what they see as quintessentially Australian. But we are defensive. We are insecure. We are dog insecure. I'm not good enough. In the 60s, there's a mass exodus of all those who've got Nightingale and who are great artists. They had to find their roots in London. So how you felt in America when you felt moved to Australia coming... so repressive here. Interesting. Yeah, this is all going to make sense to you with your personas. So in 1788, I remember when I was pregnant with my third child, Sandon, and I was with my husband at the time and in-laws for Christmas Eve and staying over for Christmas morning. And I was 5-6 months pregnant, and you know how you feel, women, when you're pregnant. Very protective. I already have 2 children. And this is a swan town that are very anti-Indigenous. And this is the irony everywhere in the world. The Brexit voters are swans, and yet they're voting against their own interests. They are the do not tell me what to do, and they're coming from a place of any foreigner, any immigrant is going to be the same as what the British were, or the colonialists, or any of the European colonisers. France, the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, whoever who was moving in and taking over bits of Africa, bits of Australia, whatever they wanted, they just divvied up the pie because they were entitled to. They were the kings, they were the aristocracy. It is coming home to roost. The France did. It's coming home to roost in all of the world. This injustice of 500 years is now coming home to roost, and we now are facing the consequences of the seeds that were sown from white, masculine privilege and entitlement and greed. So on Christmas Eve, we're having a conversation, and my ex's parents are beautiful people, very simple people, dog, swan, sparrow in their mix, but very beautiful people, but not educated people. And on this particular Christmas Eve, they'd had a lot of problems with Indigenous youth that were lost and having no opportunities, unseen, carrying the traumas of generations and generations and generations of loss of identity, soul. And soul is everything to the Aboriginal people, which I feel are very swan nightingale. I just feel that they're swan nightingale. Anyway, on this day, he started talking about how there were terrible Aboriginal families in this town, and what we should do is go and get their children and take them from them. I'm pregnant. My Raven was very well behaved for 18 years in that family, except on that day. Did I lose the plot? Nowhere near what I'm capable of, but I did speak. I was outraged. And I said, how dare you? How would it be if your children had been taken from you because of the colour of your skin, because of your extraordinary ignorance and stupidity, that you had no idea how these families worked and these tribes and clans worked and their sophisticated culture, and you think you can go and take them and rip children away from their parents at that time? How dare you? I went off. I was so upset. I was so enraged at the stupidity, and I wanted him to reverse roles. I wanted him to imagine what would it feel like if your precious children had been taken. He laughed at me and looked at me and said, oh, that's rubbish. They don't know how to look after them. They're just ignorant. I was beside myself. Things got worse the next day when I had a conversation later with my ex. Another fracture point, which was the beginning of the end. So the nightingale grief of seeing death all around, seeing tragedy, losing your children, the enormous amount of grief that has been held and carried by these people since 1788. And here we are. So Nightingale came next for me. and while Australia and we as Australians in child refuse to acknowledge how appalling and how criminal we are in our treatment of these people who owned this land. Would you like someone to come and take your house and kick you out? This is happening in Palestine now. This is happening all over the world. But somehow we think, well, it won't happen to us. We do not put ourselves in other people's shoes. And that's the difference between child and adult. An adult has the capacity to put themselves, reverse roles, into another person's shoes and say, oh my God, this is inconceivable for me because I'm so privileged. Is very unlikely to happen to me. But it happens to these people all the time. An Aboriginal woman has a speeding fine. She's in jail for years. An Aboriginal has an intellectual disorder. They're left to rot for years and nobody knows. The injustices are left, right and centre, and we do not address the causes of the problems. So, where was I up to? So we have in 2001 a very big turning point in who do we think Australia is. We've had Vietnamese people coming over. Malcolm Fraser was brilliant in welcoming the Vietnamese over. Bob Hawke welcomed lots of Chinese over after the Tiananmen Square in 1989. And they were integrated in society. Our nation is a nation of immigrants, which rarely gets mentioned. There are 7 million immigrants here and who are born Australian, but with other cultures behind them. So we had the Italians and the Greeks, of course, and the Yugoslavs, and people coming over, the English, the 10-pound poms. We had loads of people. And yet somehow we perceive ourselves to be this white nation, and we're sort of their second rate, their second Polish, whatever, fifth and sixth personas. I'm getting to the fifth, thank you, fifth and sixth personas. So then I thought, if our secret identity is Nightingale and we refuse to address the core wounds of our fourth one, as I will be saying in book 2, and you're getting a tip today, it will be the anchor that falls you down over and over again, and you will not be able to progress, and it will pull your number one down, your number one swan, into suspicion and rage and rebellion and intransigence. Yes, you're a boat person, Trevor. Well, all our ancestors are, to be quite honest. So the fifth persona, which I find really interesting, is lion. What do you reckon? We aspire to be the greatest. Oh, I love our country. Our country's the greatest. Australia has batted way above their weight in lots of things on the world stage. Of course, we're brilliant at sport. We've had I remember there was a year where we had masses of number one titles, in different sports. I think there were 19 different sports, and we were the world number one. A tiny little nation at that time. We're 26 million now, but we were a tiny little nation back then. Far less. And yet we were number one in cricket, we were number one in tennis players, we have number one this and number one that. And especially in sport, we really go for it and we can be the best, even though countries with 10-fold, 100-fold more population, and we believe in ourselves that way. We've also got a lovely connection to the arts with Nightingale, and so we've had a very strong arts focus. We've got the ballet and orchestras and music and amazing artists, world-renowned artists, but often they went over to England across the big pond and came back so that they had their credibility and could be taken seriously, because somehow we didn't take, hi Mel, somehow we did not take ourselves seriously or feel good enough unless we'd proven ourselves overseas somewhere else. Just being good here wasn't enough, because we have this I'm not good enough, I'm second best dog thing that's in all our relationships. Fascinating. So we think we're the best. We've also had Nobel Prize winners. We've been extraordinary in the healing as in medicine. Again, see the link to the Nightingale, which is connected to medicine. And so we have been very ambitious. So while dog is stronger, lion comes next, and how we go out into the world. We have parrot, the warm, friendly guys, crack a joke, ironical humour, tall poppy syndrome, but going out there, but underneath, we've aspired to do extremely well. And but you can't crow about it, says my raven. You can't crow about it, you can't make a big fuss about it, but you go out there and you're very humble, because that's the parrot swan way, but you aim to do really well. And we celebrate people who do that. Can you remember Laurie Lawrence? I don't know if you watch the Olympics, I love the Olympics, but Laurie Lawrence was a swimming coach. Huge character, my God, primary parrot lion. He used to wear these ghastly Hawaiian type shirts. And when from against all odds, what was the guy here? Duncan Armstrong, there's a memory. Duncan Armstrong in the 1984 Olympics won the 200 metres freestyle, I think it was. Aussies do love and have lots of money but do not have to work hard for it. Ha ha ha. Yeah, they do like to have that. That's the peak parrot. Can we just get it easy? So that's true, Judy. So I remember when Duncan Armstrong from lane 6 in the Olympics won the 200 metres gold medal, and they were few and far between for us. We didn't have the Australian Institute of Sport. We hadn't thrown all this money at sport and being the best because it was so much a part of the Australian identity. He was brilliant with kids, Laurie Lawrence. Anyway, I loved him. He was hilarious. He did, Josie, he did. Anyway, he was screaming and crying in the stands. He's jumping up and down like a parrot with these loud Hawaiian shirt on, bright yellow and all these other colours on it. And he used to be on the morning show, like the midday noon show with Ray Martin and Mike Walsh, whoever it was. And he was just sensational at those games. In excitement he was, but he'd do it anyway. Brilliant man. I loved him. I could relate to him. So there he was going off his tree, and he actually got behind the dais on the Olympic ceremony, and he's going, "Hey, Dunk, what do you reckon, eh?" And Duncan Armstrong is his big moment. He goes, "Piss off, shut up." And it was so parrot, it was so irreverent, it was so parrot swan Australian, and that's what we loved about him. And that was our idea of, you got Laos internet, wow, it's working, Dale. That was our idea of that lovable larrikin, which was also reinforced by Bob Hawke. And when we won the America's Cup, here we are, the underdog, coming in and we win, and aren't we fantastic? And look at us, we're so strong, we're feisty, we're strong, we're funny, we're good guys. We'll have a beer with you down the pub. And Bob had that famous thing where he said, anyone who makes their employees go to work today is a bum, that you should have had a public holiday. And so we loved that. And he was the most popular Prime Minister that we had, Bob Hawke, because he personified our personas. He had line. He also had our incredibly gifted and genius man, but he had line vision. But his parrot, swan and lion were there. So we resonated with him. Not so much with Paul Keating, because he was an owl and a raven, and people didn't quite go to him. Loads of people resonate with Trump in America because he has the top 3 personas of America, of the United States. How interesting, hey? Are you enjoying this? So anyway, this is who we like to think that we are. And then there was a fateful time. There was an election in 2001, and 4 days before the election in 2001, between Kim Beazley and little Johnny Howard. And little Johnny Howard is a mousy beaver weasel of a man. And 438 asylum seekers are found by a Norwegian freighter, the Tampa, out to sea, trying to come to Australia. And the Tampa picks them up because their boat was not seaworthy and they would have drowned. And this created a huge storm. Now, Kim Beazley was, in the polls those days, they were more accurate than they are today. Kim Beazley was well on track to be Australian Prime Minister. And he made a fateful mistake. He was not lion enough in those 4 days. Admittedly, he was caught off guard. This is what happens. Destiny moments, sliding doors are like a moment like this. And did you get it in adult or did you get it in child? Did you listen to your advice? Did you listen to your advices, or did you get the point of the turning point of where we were as a country? Did you get it? Did America get it with 2016 with Trump? No, they did not. Are they going to get it now, this year? Well, we'll see. And what happened was Howard went in to demonise the asylum seekers, coming from God knows what poverty, homophobia, religious persecution. God knows what they were coming from. But how desperate do you have to be to go in an unseaworthy boat where you have children in your arms? You risk death because life is so appalling it's not worth living. Again, could we please imagine and put ourselves in that place just for one moment and see what that might feel like and how desperate you would have to be to grab your children and grab yourselves and go, because otherwise you're at risk of an awful death. This is the truth. This is what it's like. So Johnny Howard says, these people aren't human. They throw mothers are throwing their children in the water. That was a lie, and it was proven to be a lie. It was made up. Murdoch Press all over it, loved it. Yeah, let's do this. We're at risk. Oh my God, what might happen if we're invaded by poor people who come needing a place of refuge, a safety, where we're the lucky country, we're the good country, we're friendly people, we're welcome in. G'day, mate, come on in. No, we're not. And we stopped being that country in 2001. And 4 days later, fucking Howard won that election because fear won. And that is a day that turned Australian politics in a backward direction from which we have not recovered. He is seen as an elder of the Liberal Party today. An elder fucking child. I don't have words for my rage for that man that day. I was doing a talk somewhere, and there were hundreds of people there on the day of the election, and I wore black with a black armband, and I said, here's my raven going off, Kim Beazley was meant to be a very popular Prime Minister, one of the greatest Prime Ministers we ever had, but he did not stand up and say this is outrageous. He did not at that time. And from a moment of fear, we became victims of fear, and we do not want to have happen to us what we did to the Aboriginals, to the First Nations. You see, we carry a collective guilt. All of us, we white privileged people walking here. I do today. This is the heaviness that you are waking up with. I carry a collective guilt that I am here in this place on Whadjuk land because of hideous injustices and slaughter that made it possible for me to have this lovely life looking over at the fucking fireworks tonight, which I'd like to shut my blinds. Next year, I'm going to fly away and I will not be here and I will not be a witness. I will not witness them. So here we are, we're at this place where we suddenly have this terror, unconscious, we're 98% unconscious. And we have this terror that people are going to come and swamp in and do to us what we did to them. You think of you when you're a little child and, you know, you took your sister or your brother's or your kindy mate's toy and you feel really guilty about it, but you deny, no, I didn't do it. No, I haven't got it. I mean, children lie all the time. That's part of what they do. We all do. But when we're supposed grown-ups, we're lying all the time now. But deep down, we have a fear that if we've stolen that toy, that maybe they'll come back tomorrow or the next week and they're going to steal that toy back of us because we know it's a possibility, because we know we've done it. That's what arose in Australia en masse that day. And the children said, I'm going to believe in fear. I'm going to vote Liberal. Conservative is the way to go. So what's our sixth persona? It's Beaver. Interesting. I have 4 personas the same as Australia, yet the top 2 I do not, and it feels so foreign. And I have 2 in the same places. It's just so very interesting. I have Beaver at home as well. So Beaver at home. We're very conservative at home. We can't afford to do this. We can't afford to do that. We have to conform. We have to obey. So we've got Dog and Beaver over this side. We conform, we obey the rules, we fit in the system. If you don't fit in the system, the punishment is way worse if you're Indigenous and First Nations or you're a minority of any way. LGBTIQ, women, the misogyny that has been so strong in our culture. Look at what happened with Julia Gillard. Now, we lost our way in 2001 and we've never recovered it since. Kevin Rudd's highlight moment of his prime ministership was when he said sorry. He brought it to Parliament and he did his sorry, which was just genius, visionary leadership. What did John Howard do? He stood with his back. I didn't do it, wasn't me. The mentality of the man is absolutely backward. He is despicable, as were others who were despicable in that moment. Now, unfortunately, we then developed offshore processing and we said they can't come here. We still demonise these people. If you are to follow what's been happening on Manus Island and Nauru, Papua New Guinea now, how we have repealed the Medivac laws, which came through at the end of last year, a moment of small hope, a candlelit flame of Nightingale. Let's get these kids who need medical treatment desperately, who are in a state of such soul existential crisis they don't want to live. Let's get them here and let's heal them. Let's give them the care they need. And of course, what's Morrison done the second he's come in? They've wiped out Medivac. We have now had a government who has spent $188 million, or was it $288 million? Let me see. $188 million recommissioning Christmas Island so that it was ready for asylum seekers because we don't want them and they're out. This crippled the Christmas Island tourist industry. No one came. 188 million people. It's like a Yes Minister episode where they built a hospital and they employed 500 staff, but there were no patients. And we all laughed at that in the 1980s and thought, surely not, this can't be so. But we have this in our government of today, in our child-led government of absolute entitled lion and disconnect from the world where everything is, no, we can't afford it. So we spent 188 million and it's not used. And then one family in Brisbane, Sri Lankan family, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Balola family, 2 little girls who were born in Australia and their parents are suddenly raided in the middle of the night. It puts the woman's shoulder out. She's in pain to this day. And they are sent to Christmas Island. The cost to taxpayers is 26.8 million, and they have 109 staff there in the entire facility, and they are allowed to sleep in one bed, a queen-size bed for the 2 children and this couple. Is Australia the fair country? Are we who we think we are? Where is our compassion? We've enslaved and left people to starve and paid Serco and other companies, prison companies, millions and millions to imprison people because we're so frightened that people might want to come here, might want to invade us. This is the collective consciousness. Dutton is an inhumane man. Scotty from marketing, when he was immigration minister, looking like he's this lovely, sweet Christian, but it's actually nothing at all like that, has a boat that he had made for him. I stopped the boats. In their mentality, if you are poor, it is your own fault. If you are of colour and minority, it is your own fault. If you can't succeed, you're a leaner and we're lifters. Except our government pays, wait for it, $29 billion in subsidies to the fossil companies. The key advisors to Morrison are former fossil company mining executives. The lobbying of the mining companies pay the most in donations to the Liberal government. So where are we today in this appalling place? We are running out of water. We are selling water to other countries. We are siphoning off water to wash Adani's coal. There are 53 new mines scheduled to be built. The mining companies actually only employ 37,800 people. And in time, with automation, those jobs are going to go anyway. We have driverless trains, we have lots of things coming. There are not going to be jobs here for them anyway. We have cut funding to science, we have cut funding to renewables, we have cut funding every left way. When Trevor and I drove up Australia, we're watching the coal trains go past and the drought on the other side. We're watching water tankers go up as we crossed river after river with not a single drop of water there. And on November the 15th, when I gave a talk about Big Love in Sawyers Valley at the Sound Temple, I said, Australia will have a change of consciousness this summer. So here we are today. It's Invasion Day 2020. Our love of fireworks, of money, of the good life, of our wonderful time with our oceans, our amazing time, is imperiled because we have not looked after our land. We have not respected the land. We have been greedy. We have thought about mining. We have thought about what we want, entitlement, and it's exploit, greed, use it up until the next one. We are being so consumerist in our thinking. This is right across the world. We have driverless bulldozers, thank you. So we're at this point here where you have the swans, child swans today going, fuck off. If I want to get pissed, go down with my mates. You're not Australian. We have Murdoch, who loves to play with this mentality on Sky News, the Australian, the West Australian, Kerry Stokes is exactly the same, who build up Anzac Day, which was not a thing when I was growing up. But they decided to make the useless sacrifice of Australian troops to die and be slaughtered because England asked us, UK asked us to, under Churchill I might add, that was Churchill's decision. They have decided that we'll celebrate that as, oh, this is our great identity. Now, there's a few problems with that. If Anzac Day, it's like we're what's it, soldiers to the slaughter. What's that saying? I can't think what it is. But we're just here to be slaughtered, but we don't win. And it's futile, and that's where we are. But we've got this dog obeying it, and then we've got this swan, very strong strength and mateship and defend of your country, because there's a big protector in swan, of course. And when they link up, they then go and serve the country that overtook them and became the dictator and decimated them. We have this, we're all mixed up. We're all messed up. We don't want to mess with their jet ski motors. You should see the boats outside in the river in front of me. Thank you, Trevor. It's lambs to the slaughter. And we celebrate that as if this is something to be proud of. The tragedy of the senseless waste of war. Lions love war in child. Lions support the arms industry because they make a lot of money from it. It's about money. It's about greed. It's about power. It's about I will take what I want. And we have had this in our psyche. That's our identity. And anyone who suggests otherwise is not patriotic. But what Murdoch has done very carefully, and those underneath him, is they've created this nationalist, this populist nationalism. And you're not a patriot. You don't love Australia. And so we hate you if you don't have your thongs and your Australia flag and sit and get burnt in the sun with your esky of beers tonight and say you love Australia. Well, go back to where you came from. Well, actually, you're the invaders and I lived here. Or many of us, have been, we're not here original people anyway. So there's this real split, and it's irrational child arguments, and you cannot reach these people, and it's so tragic. It's so tragic. And often the swans are the ones who live in rural areas, and then they're the salt of the earth people who are just extraordinary, who go and fight the fires and sacrifice their lives for their mates. This is so Australian. So we've got these wonderful aspects, but when they're misdirected, when the child has got them going in the wrong direction, defending unconsciously the aristocracy, the lions, the peacocks, to have their royal ways, to have their entitled ways and their enormous wealth. It's actually a tragedy that we've been watching unfold for some time. So we're at a point where it's never been more important to have a look at, well, who are we, Australia? What do we stand up for? What do we believe in? What are we about? Now, if we continue to have our 53 coal mines coming and siphoning off water so the Murray River dies and the cotton corporations get the money through their friends in the Liberal government or Labor governments, and are allowed to do what they do and kill off all the little people, all the salt of the earth people who've loved and tended to the land for so many decades. If we allow this to happen, Australia will have many parts of itself within the next 10, 15, 20 years that are uninhabitable. This is the time where Australia must wake up. This is the time when we must be proactive. Scotty from marketing, who hates that term, so he must never be called anything else. Scotty from marketing believes that we need to have more hazard burns. We have to look at the arsonist, and we have to be more, what was the words that he used? Hang on, he said resilience. We've got to have adaptability and resilience to 20-metre high flames. Good luck with that, Scotty. The man has no capacity to lead. There is no vision of leadership other than to maintain power, which unfortunately we've had for quite some time. So we're going into child denial now. There was a great article in the New York Times today talking about omnicide. Richard Flanagan wrote it, that Australia stands by now and lets their government literally take us down to the path where they can't see. It's like the king in the invisible clothes. He thinks he's had this amazing cloak made and he's invisible. He's naked, and he's a laughing stock. Well, Australia is a laughing stock. We look bloody stupid. He is a total fuckwit. Okay, he is, but so is the Duttons, so are the Abbotts, who think that climate things are a cult and a conspiracy. It's a nice little twist, isn't it, for the lions to turn it? But he's a lion swan. Of course he is. That's how it works. See the language. Be perceptive, people. Be perceptive. It's King Midas, Emperor's New Clothes. Thank you. So we have these mythological references that are archetypal, that are telling us we have been here before on this planet. There have been kings like Trump. There have been kings and weak leaders like Morrison, but who are actually quite dangerous, who are absolutely in denial. It's like Fudge in the Ministry of Magic at the end of Book 5 in Harry Potter, who won't believe that Voldemort is back. He won't believe it until he sees him. I have to see it before my eyes. Well, we saw it before our eyes with the fires this spring and this January and December. And has it opened our eyes? Oh no, we'll pretend, we'll change the language a bit. Remember we talk about love not being words, love is action. If we love Australia and we want to celebrate an Australia Day, which can never ever be on the date of such grief, if we want to love Australia, that will take action from each and every one of us. There is now a call that is being heard so many times, and politicians are even starting to go that way, where we need to consult with Aboriginal elders about how to do land management, that they need to be consulted. Thank you. We need to be elders. We need to call the truth. We need to protest. If I wasn't doing this live today, I'd be over at Invasion Day protest across the water in Forest Place. The young people get this. They are so aware. We cannot still be subservient, passive dog beavers, bowing our head and say, we'll just keep it normal, I don't want anything to change. The only people that serves are the 1%. The 1%, white, privileged, masculine, in men and women, often very strong white, privileged women with very strong masculine, disconnected from their feminine, are the ugliest people of all. Absolutely ugly, dark, awful people. I'm sure you can think of a few. So, we've had many days for Australia Day. There's been 5. We didn't actually celebrate as a holiday until 1994. And this test that people make it about, you're not a true Australian, you don't love Australia. Well, loving fear and misinformation is different. We're 1984 times, George Orwell. We must speak the truth. We need the Indigenous people to be able to step up as elders and guide now what needs to be done. We have the awful Rorts program where the entitled lions pay their friends and pay their entitled people and their electorates, like Bridget McKenzie, the sports minister, giving $100 million to sporting clubs like Applecross, a blue, as entitled a lion electorate as you're going to find one, suburb in Perth. They got $500,000 for their tennis club because they needed it. So we can spend $29 million subsidising fossil fuels, but we can't afford to boost renewables. We can't afford to create renewable jobs. We can. Do you know, yesterday it was announced that the Liberal Premier of South Australia is aiming for 100% zero emissions by 2030. 2030, and they expect to reach that target before 2030 and be able to sell their excess power to New South Wales. They've got the Tesla battery. It's not Labor versus Liberal. It is about integrity, ethics, leading for the many, not for the few. It is about realising our consumerism, our way of life cannot go on as it has, that we need to put our words of loving Australia into proactive actions where we spare those who are whole towns, people who are going to die unnecessarily, which is still going to happen. These sacrifices, almost like Anzac Day sacrifices, they go into the flames and they die. These salt of the earth people will continue to happen if we don't wake up now and have a change of consciousness. We have to leave fossil fuels once and for all. We have to make a stand. We have to be heard. We have to come together. Elders leave the keys to the future for the young ones. The young ones are up in arms, and they are being the elders, and supposed elders, like our government and Johnny Howard, have never been elders for a day in their lives. Not one day. Offshore processing is not the way to go. There are 65 million refugees worldwide now. That is the highest number there has ever been. If we want to hold boundaries and say, get out, you can't come in, there's not enough for you, when we have enough and they do not. Can you imagine what that would feel like if you were on the outside as an accident of birth? We're going to have to open our doors. There's going to be climate refugees. Do you remember that moment when Abbott and Dutton and Morrison were at a climate change conference a few years ago, and they were heard with the mic on, they didn't realise, laughing about how the Pacific nations were going to be all underwater soon anyway, so who cares? How they blocked any substantive climate policies to help the Pacific Islanders who are going to drown. And they laughed because they don't care. They'll build on a hill. They don't care. Well, now Australia can be burnt. Hailstorms, dust storms, it's so inconvenient. What an inconvenient truth. Al Gore was on the money when he spoke about that all that time ago. We've known for a long time, when you and I are in denial about issues in our own lives, when we are in denial about how fucked we are and how much we've hurt people and how much we've done damage in our lives get worse and worse and worse, and suffering continues, not just for us. We think that fate keeps visiting us. We think that these awful fated feelings and events happen to us. We're so unlucky. It's not that we're unlucky. It's not that it's fate. It's that when we're in denial and anger and bargaining and pretending, we are absolutely guaranteeing that more fate moments need to come through, because we're being thick as bricks, we're dense, and we haven't got reality and the truth. The thing that makes you adult is facing the truth of your times, the truth of your life, the truth of your shadow. Australia and all countries who have been raised on the rotten foundations of colonial's power, tyranny, genocide, stolen generation, rape, torture, rape and pillage of women, children, resources, to create the world that we quite happily and comfortably live in today. All of this is crumbling and must crumble, because we've got to start again. So how do you birth more soul? We've lost our soul. The world has lost its soul. The epidemic of mental health issues is about chronic soul sickness. Consumerism does not equate to soul food. It doesn't touch the sides. We need meaning, we need purpose, we need to belong, we need to connect, we need to connect with our home. And so what happens in our lives when we've gone a long way, which we all do, when we've gone a long way from our soul and our home, we're acting in more and more insensitive to abusive ways from our child personas, because we're a long way from our soul and we're just in child defensive mode and survival mentality, and it's me before we. When we do this, our lives eventually come to a crash, and that crash breaks open those child defenses so that our soul can come forward. And we need to feel our heart, we need to feel remorse, we need to feel tragedy. We need to feel, when we watch those people on Malakuta Beach, when we see over a billion animals dying, that their lives are connected to our lives, that the trees are connected to us, that the earth is connected to us, that the water is a living entity and that is connected to us, that we are killing ourselves as well as each other. And by feeling such grief, it is the only recourse Mother Nature has to bring us to account. She has a longer memory. You cannot cheat Mother Nature. You cannot cheat the world soul. You cannot cheat your soul and pretend that you are righteous and just and ethical when you're pretending and in denial and greedy and self-serving. So we have to have these chronic, painful, awful crises where innocent people get caught up and sacrificed, to remember what the sacred is, to break our hearts open and go, oh my God, I don't know that I need to buy any new clothes for the rest of my life. I don't know that I can bear to watch the millions of dollars worth of boats out there have their fireworks display and pretend that the world is fine while they're having their champagne and their hors d'oeuvres and having a lovely time and yahooing and, oh my God, isn't this great? It feels so disrespectful to the East Coast people who have lost everything, and the drought that's there, and the times that are still to come, the fires that are still alight. We've got 39 degrees tomorrow. Do you think that weather might go over to the East Coast, and we might see something else coming? You better believe it. To go into denial. We are in a fight for our soul, Australia today, on 26th of January 2020. We are in a fight for our soul. We need to watch, we need to see, we need to not be fooled, we need to not pretend, we need to feel the grief and the horror, because that brings us back. And it's like, I don't care whether I'm what I look like, what size I am, whether I've got new things or whether I can have that. It's like all those things are so meaningless when you see how important it is to come together. Now, have we not seen the best of Australia, the most beautiful Australian soul that have come through the fires? Those people stepping up. We had the dogs, men and women, feeding in their droves. We had the Sikh community, Indian Sikh community. We had the Muslims, these people that we demonise, who are human beings like you and me, who came together, came to fed, drove 7 hours in the night with trucks full of food. Scotty from fucking marketing went to visit Cobargo and had 6 4-wheel drives with him, and they bought 1 pack of water. The fireman he spoke to said, I haven't eaten or drunk anything for 9 hours. He goes, patted him on the shoulder, I'll leave you to it. No food, no water. The disconnect is the greatest thing that we see with child, and that's how abusers abuse. That's how we persecute. That's how we victimise people. It's the degree of disconnect from empathy, integrity. So this is where we are. The great swans are stepping up and saving each other. Neighbours are sacrificing their own houses and saving next door's crops and saving the animals. People are out there volunteering to help and nurse the animals. We are being shown this is really valuable. This is Australia. These things matter. Go and stand up. Look after them. Do what you can. What's your part to play? Because there is no accident that we are here in these times. You've all got something to offer. I'm sure you all have been in your way. We feel a very long way away from it here in Australia, in Perth. So it's a long time to go before the next election. So it's going to take something more. If this doesn't make us rise to say we're not going to have a country for our children and our grandchildren, and that we are not being elders, we are being wasteful children who are at the party saying let them eat cake while they're starving in the French Revolution, which, by the way, have had 51 weeks of strikes, which we don't see on our TV stations. Murdoch does not show you that. Don't look at Channel 7. Don't read the West Australian. Don't read the Australian. You are being brainwashed like a puppet. Don't be that stupid. They have had 51 consecutive weeks, the longest in France's history, against the pension age rise that Macron was wanting to put in. Extraordinary. Teachers, lawyers, doctors, riots in the streets. There's more riots in the streets in a quarter of the world's population now, and it's never been that high ever in history. We are the grassroots revolution. We are a movement. Listen to Michael Moore's Rumble podcast. They're fantastic if you want to get across all of this stuff. We are a grassroots movement. Marianne Williamson about that. It's like come with heart. AOC, Bernie. We are a grassroots movement. We are coming forward, and in Australia they are watching us and they're getting it better than we're getting it. But if you're feeling this, we have Nightingale, we feel the grief, but we need to hold the grief and we need to say, well, what's the action we need to take? And it is not to keep life as usual. Or Australia's going to be a very unlucky country. Again, we need to give our kids a fair go. We need to give our grandkids a fair go. It is a love illusion. We need to turn away from where we got lost in 2001 with Tampa and Howard. They'll be out there. I'm not fighting them. I had a couple of people respond to things I've written on Facebook. My God, I had a few really cutting. My raven wanted to kill them, skin them alive, and I don't speak to them. I will not speak. I will not speak. You don't get a sentence, Boundaries of Steel. You don't get a sentence from me. It only takes a minority of us who are active and awake and connected and belonging and seeing the big picture to make the change. Do not engage, do not engage, do not engage. But we go and speak up and we vote, and you do whatever it feels like you need to do. It's very important today. When I saw that Australia Day was going to be on my next live, I went, oh my God, I think I have a holiday. I don't think I want to do it. I don't think I want to talk about it. And then I thought, fuck, I don't believe in accidents. I think I have to. I think I have to call us out for the roots that were sown in 1788. I think we have to choose between fireworks and fires. I think we have to put our money where our mouth is. I think we have to make sacrifices because that's how you come back to the sacred. I think we need to recognise how ignorant we are. I am so ignorant of my white prejudice, the things I can say that are so harmful to other people. We need to become aware. We need to be sensitive. We need to have ethics. We need to have integrity. We need to call it out when we see the lies. We need to not listen, take that on board, but call it out. And then we need to get together. And together we will. There is so much hope now. When I woke this morning, I read all these articles. Please follow The Guardian. Please follow The Guardian. These fantastic articles who are across this. They're not spiritual, but they're across this. They're very our, but boy, they've got it. And you get educated and you feel this hope that there's this mass awakening. There's this mass awakening. So we're part of a movement. Persona Grata's fucking part of this movement, whatever that means, whatever that takes us. So my darlings, we do love Australia, but I love it enough to want to be an elder. I love it enough to want to be able to say to my grandkids, we did all we could. We kept going. In fact, when it's hopeless, we're going to keep going. We don't stop when it's hopeless. My last breath at 96, we still do whatever it feels like we need to do. And it should be scary. It should be daunting. And then you know you're getting it right. Please call it out. Don't engage in arguments. We don't change. You know, when you argue with a toddler and child, you're not going to change it. But join up with those who are awake. And let's become elders. Let's become elders. Oh, I knew I'd cry today. So, next year I'm going to fly away and not see the fireworks here and shut my door on it. But today I'm going to sit with the discomfort of the haves and the have-nots. And I'm going to feel that polarity in my being. No more. Enough. Enough. Changing the date is just the start, for fuck's sake. There's so much more. All right, my darlings. How have you gone today? How are you feeling? I hope this was not too rambly and not too, you know, here's my line. Too much. Everyone here is just awesome. I've been so looking forward to seeing you all today, to feel like we were connected. Vulnerability is strength. This is strength. And we're going to be brave. But I'm not going to be one of those. I'm not going to fall for that patriotic, nationalistic Australia crap. It's got nothing to do with it. They're murderers. It's what's it called? Omnicide, where there's a consciousness of we'll just take as much as we have and we're all right by the time we're dead. We'll be dead by the time this happens. No, not on our watch. Okay. In time, when I do my tour, this will always, it was enough. In time, I will be touring and this will be part of my message everywhere I go, because spiritual work is advocacy work. Let's be elders. I'm so glad to talk to you today. I don't know what we'll do next week, but I give you all my love and we're here together, but we'll shut the doors on these appalling charade of a celebration today. There's nothing to celebrate. It's time to get to work. Love you.